So this light source right here, that's sun in our case when we are discussing about a solar eclipse. The object in this case will be, let's make it interactive. The object will be, yes, and the shadows will fall on Earth's surface, right? Earth's surface. Now, if you do this kind of a ray diagram, you will get two kinds of shadows. The central, very dense or dark shadow is called umbra. That's the important shadow during total solar eclipse. The path of totality, as we call it, which progresses from west to east. So that's umbra. And you also get a faint and bigger shadow or bigger in diameter, which is called penumbra. Okay, so these are some of the basic concepts related to an eclipse, umbra and penumbra. Then we come to the phases of moon. Now, as we discussed, for solar eclipse, the moon is in which phase? It's new moon, or it is Amavasya, right? So let's revise phases of moon again. Phases of moon have nothing to do with shadow of Earth falling on moon. It is just a geometry. It is just about the positions of Earth, moon and sun. That's it. Nothing more than that. So if you see, there is an observer of Earth right here. We are looking at Earth from its north pole, and Earth is rotating anti-clockwise from this when seen in this orientation. And we have four positions. That's the noon position for this observer, sunset, midnight, and sunrise. Okay. And we have moon orbiting Earth. Of course, this is a simplified orbit. In reality, it's an elliptic orbit. We have simplified it for the understanding. And sunlight is coming from this direction. So, for this observer will not be able to see moon because it's in the same region of sky that sun is. So, that observer will not be able to see sun. Basically, sun is not the culprit here. Our atmosphere is the culprit. That we have to remember. Our atmosphere scatters light, which we very well know as Rayleigh scattering, and that's why we are not able to see stars other than sun or any objects other than sun during daytime, right? So, if you look from moon, you will see sun as well as other celestial objects. But from Earth, we cannot do it. We cannot see it because atmosphere scatters the light. So anyway. For this particular position, it is new moon, right? As moon progresses about a week, in about a week, it's 1 quarter, and then we see, now always, one hemisphere of moon is illuminated, or 1/2 of moon is always illuminated, but how much of that we see, that is what a phase is all about. So here also, a hemisphere of moon or half of moon is illuminated, but we can see only half of the half illuminated portion, right? So when we see from here, we see the right half illuminated and the left half dark, right? So that's half moon for us, okay? In fact, it completes quarter of its orbit, but we see it as half moon. When moon is exactly opposite to sun as seen from Earth, so we have setting sun and rising moon, sun setting in west and moon rising from east. That kind of an alignment is when we see full moon. The complete hemisphere that is illuminated is visible from Earth. So that's why we see a circular disk of moon or full moon, right? Which is important in what kind of eclipse? Full moon? Yes, the lunar eclipse, right? Okay. And then we have the third quarter, which is again half moon, and then we come to yes, then the cycle repeats. So, how many days is this cycle? Phase to phase, new moon to new moon. So, with respect to stars, it is 27.3 days, but with respect to phases, it is 29.5 days. Okay, which is a synodic and sidereal and synodic months. Okay, we will come to that later. So, this is about moon phases. Now, let's see the eclipse geometry of the positions during an eclipse. Okay. That's Earth, that's the axis of Earth. Then we have moon here orbiting Earth. So this is north pole, south pole of Earth. Moon is orbiting anti-clockwise in this orientation. We have sunlight coming from this direction, and that's what is causing this shadow cone or umbral cone to form. Whenever you put a bigger light source and a small object in front of it, the shadow will always be in form of a cone, right? It will always be in form of a cone. But whether that cone reaches Earth's surface or not, that will decide whether we are going to see a total solar eclipse or an annular or partial solar eclipse, right? Okay. So in this case, people on this path of totality are going to see total solar eclipse whenever, on different times, not at the same time. As the shadow progresses from west to east, they will all see totality for a few minutes, depending on that eclipse, that particular eclipse. Okay? Yeah. Now, little bit more about this geometry. If you see the lower figure, this is the plane in which Earth orbits Sun. Okay? So, if you see solar system from afar, if you see solar system from a far distance, what you will see is we have Sun and Earth orbiting it in a fixed plane. It's not like once it orbits like this, then orbits like this. It's not random haphazard. It orbits, Earth orbits Sun in a fixed plane, which we call ecliptic. From other perspective, if you plot Sun's path on sky map, so what happens is because of Earth's revolution around Sun, the stars in the background of Sun keep on changing. That's what we call as Sun jumps one constellation or one zodiacal constellation every month. Okay, so from other perspective, we can see it as path of Sun traced on the map of stars, which is also called ecliptic, the line of ecliptic. So there are two ways to look at this. Now, when you introduce Moon's orbit into this geometry, so this is how Moon's orbit is. Moon does not orbit Earth in the same plane as Earth orbits Sun. Moon orbits in a slightly tilted or slightly inclined plane. It is inclined by 5 degrees. So if Earth orbits Sun in this or in this plane, Moon slightly orbits like this. It slightly orbits in an inclined plane. Are you with me so far? Yeah. Okay. So that's very, very important. This 5 degrees inclination is very, very important. This diagram you very well know. We are all aware of this diagram from our geography classes. So that's 23.5 degrees axial tilt with respect to its orbital plane, right? So, and this is North Pole and South Pole of Earth rotating anticlockwise when viewed from north. And to this orientation, now if you put Moon's orbit, it is inclined by 5 degrees to this reference of ecliptic. Okay? Remember, it's not elliptic, it's ecliptic. That's because eclipses can only happen when Sun and Moon are together on that trajectory or on that line. So we'll talk about that in detail. So it's ecliptic, plane of ecliptic or path of ecliptic. Yeah, so this is what happens during any normal new moon when there is no alignment or all three bodies are not in a straight line. So when viewed from Earth, we see Sun in sky and we see Moon at a slightly, we do not see literal, but Moon is at a different position. It is not covering Sun. Moon is not covering Sun or obscuring Sun in any way. So that's when the usual or normal new moon occurs. And because of this 5 degrees tilt, sometimes Moon is slightly this way or slightly that way, right? So not every new moon can be a solar eclipse. Okay? There are more factors involved in this, so we'll see one by one. Yeah, so this is what a typical new moon looks like. Now here it looks as if it is covering Sun, but it's not always the case. So it can be somewhere here, here or here or here, okay, on a typical new moon, which is not an eclipse. Again, now there is a slight animation here. Before that, let's see two more important concepts which are, or one concept which is node, concept of node. Okay. As we discussed, Moon's orbit is inclined by 5 degrees to the reference of ecliptic, right? It's inclined by 5 degrees. So what happens is, at a certain point, okay, first start with ecliptic. Anything north of ecliptic, we call it north side for now, just for the sake of simplicity. This is north side and this is south side. Are you with me? So at a particular point, what will happen is, Moon will cut this plane and start going southward. Okay? And about a half a month later, it will cut that plane again and start going northward. So wherever moon cuts that plane and starts going northward is called ascending node, because moon ascends, moon rises towards north. I mean, we cannot see rising towards north, but in sky, whatever ecliptic reference we see, we will see moon on this side or that side. That's north and south. That's how we will see it in sky. But these are important concepts for eclipse, from eclipse point of view. Ascending node and descending node. The point from where moon starts going northward of ecliptic, that's ascending node, and the point on the ecliptic plane where moon starts descending towards south, that's called descending node. Okay? Yeah, so these are the nodes. Okay, so that's ecliptic. Okay, and that's moon's orbit. Now, which should be this node? Moon is going to the north, right? So that should be ascending node, and this one will be descending node, right? If the two bodies, sun and moon, happen to be on this same point, then only we get a perfect alignment. They cannot get aligned perfectly at this position because the points are not common. That point is not common between ecliptic and the moon's orbit. So eclipses only can happen when the two bodies are apparently on this nodal point, okay, or one of these nodal points. Okay, so that's which kind of eclipse is this in this position right now? Sun is behind, moon is covering it. Yes, this is a, in this particular case it is total solar eclipse. Yeah. Now, why is solar eclipse a very magical phenomenon, or why is it so exciting, so magnificent? That has a lot to do with the ratios of distance and sizes. So apparent sizes of sun and moon is same in our sky, right? Sun and moon both roughly look the same size in our sky. Everyone agrees? Slight difference here and there, but roughly they look the same size. That's because sun might be 400 times, roughly 400 times larger than moon, but sun is also 400 times as far as moon is, right? So that again puts their angular or puts their apparent sizes same with each other. Okay. Yeah. So this is a light calculation. If you can do that. So this we have taken the size ratio and we have taken the distance ratio. It's roughly the same. It doesn't have to be exactly same, of course. It's roughly the same, and that's why I mean this kind of alignment or this kind of relationship between the sizes is only seen in case of Earth system. Okay, it is not seen with any other planet system. Anyway, Venus and Mercury, they don't have any moon, so there is no question. But if you take Mars, for example, as you go further, as you go from Mars or Jupiter or Saturn, what happens to the angular size of Sun, or what happens to the apparent size of Sun? Will it go on increasing or decreasing? We are going farther, right? We are going farther from Sun. So Sun will become smaller and smaller in sky, right? And the moons which will be orbiting those planets, they will be bigger in sky, right? They will be orbiting closer to their home planets. So that way the apparent sizes of Sun and the particular moon, those will not match. So there will be total eclipse, but it will not be very special. We are going to see why total solar eclipse is special, because we see some mysterious part of Sun which we don't see normally, which is corona. Have you heard of this corona? Right? Yes. So we are going to see some beautiful photographs of it, and which we can only see during a total solar eclipse when the sizes are just matching. Apparent sizes of Sun and Moon are just matching. Okay. So these are the types of solar eclipses. So what kind of eclipse we are going to see tomorrow? Hopefully, if it's clear, it's annular. At the same time, rest of India is going to see a partial solar eclipse. Yes, depending on what distance they are from the path of eclipse. That will decide the percentage, or that will decide the obscuration, as they call it. Okay? Yeah. So we will be focusing mainly on annular solar eclipse, but we will briefly discuss all of them. Okay. So as you can see, this particular path, this is actually a total solar eclipse, example of a total solar eclipse, and the rest of India, as we discussed, I mean, it's similar to that. It will see partial eclipse. Yes. So total solar eclipse in this dark band, and partial solar eclipse in the penumbral region. So this is umbra and this is penumbra. Okay. Yeah. Now some interesting numbers. When we see moon slowly covering the disk of sun, this happens very slowly. Apparently it happens very slowly, but moon is moving at a very tremendous speed, speed of 1700 km per hour, which is the most important component as far as speed is concerned. This is the most important component in this. So let's see, if you are looking at the eclipse, this way you have west, this way you have east. So moon will naturally be going from right to left, and as you see the sun's disk being covered, you are actually seeing moon orbiting, right? This is what orbital movement of moon is, right? Okay. And as it moves from your right to your left, at the same time Earth will be also moving from left to right in its orbit. Can you get this? Can you imagine this? If you see the top view of the solar system, this is sun, this is Earth. Earth is going this way, and around the Earth moon is going this way, right? Because moon orbits anti-clockwise and Earth also orbits anti-clockwise. Yeah. So a few more numbers. These are the typical numbers of the related to the shadows. Umbra can be about 16,000 kilometers long on the Earth's surface. It can be that much long, whereas the width of that path can only be 250 kilometers at max. The width of that path. Okay, and typically it is less than 100 to 160 kilometers. Okay, penumbral diameter about 6,400 kilometers. So that's the penumbral diameter, and it covers only 1% of Earth's surface area. Okay, so it's not very significant, but for those people who are standing on the path of totality, it's a very special scene. Okay, yeah. So these are paths of all the eclipses from 2001 to 2020. You can see there are variety of paths that we can see, and there are a lot of factors involved here. Earth's inclination, actual tilt of Earth, then moon's pi-degree orbital tilt, and also moon being a nearer object. Observers from various regions of Earth, they don't see moon at a fixed position with respect to stars. There will be slight difference because of parallax, right? Okay, so various kinds of factors are involved here, but these are the typical, this is how the distribution of eclipse paths is there. So there is no discrimination in terms of regions where eclipses occur. Eclipses occur in various regions all across the Earth. Everyone is equally lucky, and you just have to choose which eclipse is exciting for you and plan to view it. Okay, some statistics about it. Total solar eclipses are rare, and yeah, so in a year maximum 7 eclipses occur, out of which 5 are total solar eclipses. That is maximum 7, and out of these 5 will be solar eclipses. And in a year no lunar eclipse may happen. There can be 0 lunar eclipses in a particular year, but solar eclipses, definitely 2 solar eclipses we will get. So when someone asks you how rare is a solar eclipse, you have to counter question what type of eclipse you are talking about. Are you just talking solar eclipse in general, or total solar eclipse, or partial, or what exactly, right? So depending on that, the statistics will be, okay? Yeah, so these are the factors that determine the duration of solar eclipse, for how much time sun's disk will stay covered, okay? That specifically applies to total solar eclipse. Maximum you can typically get is 7.5 minutes. So recorded duration is just beyond that. 7 minutes 40 seconds is the maximum recorded duration. 1991 from Mexico. And these are the factors we will see one by one. Altitude of sun and moon in sky, then Earth sun distance, Earth moon distance, how it governs. So again, we'll come back to these orbits. We have sun here, we have elliptical orbit of Earth, and we have elliptical orbit of moon around Earth, right? So because of that, we get nearest position of Earth to sun and the farthest position of Earth to sun. Then we also get nearest position of moon to Earth and nearest or farthest position of moon to Earth. Okay. So these positions have a specific name. In case of sun, in case of Earth, it is called perihelion and aphelion, nearest and farthest. Whereas when we are talking about objects in Earth's orbit, we call them perigee and apogee. Okay. So depending on that, we have these variations in the apparent size of Moon and Sun. So you can see Moon has a lot of variation. This is when Moon is farther from Earth. This is when it is closer to Earth. And this is when Earth is farther from Sun and when Earth is closer to Sun. Do you know when Earth is closer to Sun? It's in first week of Jan every year. First week of Jan. Even if it's winter, yes, Earth is closer to Sun at that time. And we very well know that distance has nothing to do with seasons. Okay? It has nothing to do with seasons as far as summer and winter, simple summer and winter are concerned. Okay? It's all about the inclination, tilt of Earth's axis. So from this we get 4 possibilities, right? We can get AX or AY, or we can get BX, BY, correct? So we'll discuss these 4 possibilities. Earth at aphelion and Moon at perigee, meaning Earth is at farther point from Sun and Moon is at the nearest to Earth. Okay. At that time, Moon will have a very big. Moon will have bigger size. Sun will have a smaller size, apparent size, and will have longest solar eclipse. Okay. The other extreme is Earth at perihelion and Moon at perigee. Yeah. So at that time, Moon cannot cover the full disk of Sun, and we will have annular eclipse, which we are going to see tomorrow. So apparent size of Moon in sky is smaller, whereas apparent size of Sun is larger. Okay, and the other 2 possibilities are in between. Okay, where we see, yeah. So now this is very important for this particular eclipse. What happens during annular eclipse? So see this shadow diagram or ray diagram carefully. Now this is a total solar eclipse where we are standing in the umbra, standing in the dark shadow cast by Moon. Whereas in this case, the shadow cone is terminating right there, right? Before reaching Earth's surface, the shadow cone terminates in a point, but there is a zone just below it, which we call as antumbra, umbra, antumbra, or anti of umbra. And that's where, this B is the zone where you get to see this beautiful ring of fire, as they call it, or beautiful annular solar eclipse. Okay. From other regions, like from penumbra, you will see partial, and in this case, you will see total solar eclipse when you are standing in the umbra. Okay. So this is about hybrid eclipse. We will just briefly touch it. So for this observer, for whom the eclipse is happening on horizon, for him this will be annular solar eclipse because the shadow cone is terminating right here before reaching the surface, whereas for this observer it will be a total solar eclipse because the shadow cone is penetrating into Earth's surface, or it's reaching the Earth's surface. Now we'll come to the exciting part, some of the fascinating photographs that JVP members have clicked over the years observing various eclipses. This is the partial phase. This is one of the magical views that we can see during a total solar eclipse, or even during annular solar eclipse if you are standing at the right position. What do you think causes these beads? What do you think causes this beautiful scene to occur? Yes, but why not just plain? Why doesn't it work like? Why so many spots of light? Why so many spots of light? Why doesn't light start entering evenly? Yes? Exactly right. Surface of Moon is wavy. It has mountains and valleys and all geological features, right? Or the topographical features. And because of that, the first ray of Sun will enter from valley. Will enter from a valley, not from the average profile of Moon. It will enter from a valley. And that's when we will get maybe the first bead, any one bead of this. And slowly as Moon's disk moves away from Sun, we might see 2, 3 or 4 beads occurring, which are called Baily's beads. These were first discovered and explained. These were first explained by Bailey. Okay. So what are the contacts? So when Moon's disk starts covering Sun's disk, when the first contact occurs between these 2 disks, we call it first contact. Second contact is when it completely covers, moon's disk completely covers sun, that's second contact. Then there is totality, I mean we are talking about total solar eclipse for now. Then there is totality for some time, few minutes. Then slowly we might see Baily's beads, that's when roughly our third contact will be. And the fourth contact is when moon's disk completely leaves sun's disk alone and goes ahead happily. Okay? Yeah. That's the thing we are talking about, which we cannot see in normal circumstances, which is corona. Okay? So that's a photograph by Fred Espenak, very renowned eclipse hunter. He has a beautiful website also, mreclipse.com. You can check that out. So this happens only because of this beautiful coincidence of matching apparent sizes of suns and moon's disks. More features, solar prominences. You might have heard about solar flares or coronal mass ejections or CMEs. So these kind of features also you can capture in a photograph if you are lucky. That's because these happen just outside the photosphere or just around the corona region or in just where the corona starts. Okay, so you can capture these in your photographs. This is something very interesting that happens just before totality and just after totality, where you see dark bands or dark lines going from west to east. They go in very rapid succession, and there are many lines that you can see. So you see just before sun is getting completely covered, and when moon's disk is moving away, that is when totality is about to end. That's also time when you see these shadow bands. Very exciting. I remember I have seen these from the eclipse that we observed from the US in 2017, a couple of years back. This also is very interesting, where from the leaves or from foliage you get sun's rays, and each of those gaps acts as a pinhole camera, and it projects the image of sun onto the ground, and depending on what phase of eclipse it is, you will see either crescent or even annular phase right there on the ground. So it's a pre-pinhole camera or many pre-pinhole cameras in action in nature. So all of these photographs have been captured by our experienced members. Yeah, so this one captured by Dr. Sagar Gokhale, who is going to speak in one of the lectures. That was from Tamil Nadu, 15 January 2010, many years ago, and beautiful annular solar eclipse that he captured. Okay, so just last slide. I'll just briefly cover this because most of the information about this particular eclipse has been covered in the booklet that you have, and you can refer to that for more details. This is the path of this particular eclipse. Now it looks like this because we are looking at that path on a plain paper or on a 2D map. If you look at it on a globe, it will appear normal to you, like almost like a straight line. Okay, but we are projecting it on a 2D map. So that's what it looks. That's why it looks kind of weird, right? So that's where southern region of India is, and that's where these places, Kannur and Coimbatore and so on. So this is how the shadow path is passing. Whereas if you, I'm not sure whether you are able to see these faint green lines, which define what kind of shadow? What kind of shadow that is? We call it? Yes, exactly. We call it penumbra. So in this case, can we see umbra? Can we see umbra? It's an annular solar eclipse, remember. Can we see umbra in this case? No, because the shadow cone is terminating before reaching Earth's surface, right? So we can see antumbra but no umbra. Clear? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks a lot. If you have maybe one or two quick questions, we can cover those. Hybrid solar eclipse. We briefly touched that in one of the slides. If you want, you can just go back. Yeah. So that's hybrid solar eclipse where different observers on Earth. So for this observer, is it sunrise or sunset? it's sunrise, right? Earth is rotating like this. We are looking at Earth from North Pole. So this observer, while sun is rising, that observer is going to see which kind of eclipse? See, this is Antumbra right there. This is Antumbra. Umbra cannot form because shadow cone is terminating right there. The umbral cone is terminating before reaching Earth's surface, right? This is happening because of Earth's curvature, remember, right? So this observer will see annular solar eclipse while the sun is rising. Whereas for this observer, where will sun be in sky? Right overhead, and that observer is going to see which kind of eclipse? Total solar eclipse, because that observer will be standing right in the umbra. So that's hybrid eclipse, where in one particular eclipse you can see different types of eclipses, like annular, partial as well as total. Is that clear? Yeah? Yes, that's right. Okay, I think, shall I hand it over to the next speaker? So, but that depends on where that eclipse starts. So it won't always start like this. It can also start somewhere here, right? Directly somewhere here, or directly somewhere here and like this. It will never touch. So as I said earlier, it depends on various factors. The distance factor, right? That's also important here because that determines whether the shadow cone will touch Earth's surface or not. So that will depend on that particular eclipse. But not every eclipse can be a hybrid eclipse. That's for sure. Okay? Yeah. Okay, I think we are running slightly late, so I'll hand it over to the next speaker. I hope you enjoyed this session, and all the best to you. Make the most of this session, or make the most of all these activities, and take this knowledge home and share it with others. So we can discuss it offline probably because we are running slightly late. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so my name is Bhargav Joshi. I am a volunteer of Jyotirvidya Parisamstha, and my today's topic is going to be brief history of eclipses. So we saw the basics of eclipses in the lecture before, and my topic is going to be a history of eclipses. So since ancient times, people have been observing the eclipses. So my presentation is basically on the stories and concepts of eclipses from various cultures. Even in the image right now, if you can see, there is a red color dot and there is a wolf which is swallowing. So this is one of the folk tales from Korean mythology itself. So I have used this image just in order to illustrate what the people of the past thought about eclipses. Okay, so let's proceed. We are short on time. So let's see the etymology. So eclipse, ये जो word है, that comes from the Greek word eklepsiasis. So eklepsiasis is actually means abandonment or the downfall. So because eclipses were thought to be, you can say, some monster swallowing the sun, they were known to be ill omens in all the mythologies of the world. So that is why they named it the abandonment or the downfall. So this is what eclipse means. Later it was derived into the name called eclipse in English. So there are certain myths and superstitions about eclipses. This image itself shows all the folk tales. So this image is going to be in the background, and all the folk tales are given in this image itself. So let's start with the first folk tale. Yeah, so the Pomo folk tale. So the Pomo is a group in North America. It was a sect, or you can say it was an ancient clan. So Pomo folk tales for eclipse dictate that there was a great bear. So the great bear used to swallow the eclipse during a total solar eclipse. Because of the disappearance of the sun, they used to panic. And as you can see in the image behind, you can see a huge bear in the background. So that is the bear of the Pomo folktale, and it is swallowing the sun above, or it is approaching towards the sun. So this was the concept of Pomo folktales. And as we can see, this was again a superstition. Just because people could not understand why the eclipses occur, they used to describe it by monsters or by some strange stories. So this is one of the story by folk tales of Pomo from the North American subcontinent. Now we have the Norse mythology. So I have no idea if you ever heard of the Norse mythological terms Thor and Odin before, but this is the similar mythological term. So Vikings, SI group, not group, it was a sect actually, and Vikings used to believe that there are certain two dogs in the sky. There are two monsters in the sky. Those two dogs are given. So this is from the Viking folk tales. So they believe that during an eclipse, there are two dogs of the sky, and those two dogs are the, you can say, sons or daughters of a dark god. So because sun is the light-giving god, the two dogs of the dark god used to block the sun. One of them used to eat the sun, which they described as a solar eclipse, and one of them used to eat the moon, which they described as a lunar eclipse. So these were the two dogs, Skoll and Hati. So this was an understanding of the Norse mythology, and whenever the sun or whenever the moon used to come in between the earth and the sun, they used to say that the dogs swallow the sun. And so this was again a superstition, not a real story. So you can see those two dogs right here. Then we have Korean folktales. So even the folktales in Korea about the eclipse was similar. In fact, they are so similar that you can even see the Bulgay term. If you see the term Bulgay, it also denotes that Bulgay were also the two dogs that chase the sun. So again, even Korean folks didn't have an understanding of the eclipse as a phenomenon. So they use the two dogs again. Then we have folktales from Vietnam. So if you again see at the background of the image, there is a frog here, a weird frog which is swallowing the sun. So that was the understanding of Vietnamese, that there is a toad in the sky which swallows the sun. So if you can see in all the stories, something is swallowing the sun, because they could not grasp the concept that the sun disappears in the sky. And how is it happening? So they tried to explain those by using myths and superstitions. Then we have Chinese, of course. So even in the image behind, you can see a dragon, a great dragon, and it is holding the sun and taking it away. So that is how Chinese used to define it. And apart from that, you can see there is a pyramid here. So the Mayans and the Aztecs, they used to perform sacrifices. So when the sun used to disappear in the sky, they used to perform human sacrifices on their sacrificial altar. They used to sacrifice human beings just so that the sun would, you can say, appear back in the sky. A sacrifice to the sun god. So that was again a very, you can say, horrendous superstition, because people used to get killed there. So that is Mayan folk tales, and you can see little people here. So those are actually the Inca civilization. So when the moon used to block the sun during the eclipse, the Inca civilization used to fire arrows in the sky, blazing arrows of fire, and they thought that those arrows might kill the dark god and the sun would reappear in the sky. So they used to fire arrows towards the dark god. So this was another superstition. And then you can see there is a river here. Actually, it is not visible in the image, it is below this image. So there is a river here, and that is Ganga. So even in the Indian mythology, people used to take a bath in the Ganga because they thought eclipses were actually something unholy, and they can actually, you can say, pollute the weather. So we need to take a bath in order to purify ourselves. So that was another misconception. So just because the astronomical phenomena was not understood by the ancient people, they used all those superstitions and all these stories in order to define that phenomenon. This was beyond their scientific method or beyond their rational understanding. But today we know that all these phenomena are not actually, you can say the stories are not actually true. They are just myths and superstitions. So what comes next? So if you can see in almost all the folk tales, America, Scandinavia, India, something is swallowing the sun. If you particularly refer to India, India में एक असुर है जिसका नाम राहु है. Have you heard of this term, Rahu? Yeah, Rahu and Ketu. You must have heard of both of them. So in our mythology, it is said that Rahu swallows the sun. He already saw the wolf and he already saw the bear from North American subcontinent. So as time passed by and as we developed scientific method, these myths started fading, and we started creating a rational understanding of what an eclipse is. So that started from 130 BC, before Christ. So eclipses were often used by ancient astrologers to predict the dying of a king. Okay, so the king used to get very insecure because most of the predictions were considered to be true. So kings, like in Scandinavia, used to order their astrologers to achieve a phenomenal understanding of this subject. So since 130 BC, people actually started studying eclipses, not from the point of stories, but from the point of astronomy. And so they actually started measuring the distances or the shadows or achieving a more rational perspective. So this was the first thing that was discovered by Hipparchus or Aristarchus. There was an astronomer in Greek mythology, उसका नाम Hipparchus था. So Hipparchus and Aristarchus together, उन्होंने एक concept you can say they presented a concept, and it was based purely on trigonometry. So Aristarchus was a man in Turkey. Turkey mein, you can say in the region of Turkey, there was a total solar eclipse. As you saw in the previous presentation, even if it is a total solar eclipse in one part, the other part experiences partial solar eclipses. So in Turkey, there was a total solar eclipse. But he found out, or he heard from his another scientific colleague, that 600 miles south of Turkey, in the continent of Egypt, there was a partial solar eclipse. And only 4/5 of the sun was covered. So now this was a very, you can say, new thing for Aristarchus. He went all the way to Egypt. He took the readings which were taken by Egyptian astronomers. He compared them to his total solar eclipse, and he simply used a trigonometrical understanding. So as you can see, this alpha actually denotes the tilt of the earth. And then when you extend this sun rays, sunlight always, or every ray of light travels in a straight line. So this is a